And I'd like to call the meeting of the Financial Committee of Community Health Bonneville County to order. First on the agenda, please note our mission and vision statements. And next is approval of the agenda. We have a small group of board members, so I'm just kind of going to look that way each time when it's been moved and supported. Is there any discussion on the agenda? Yeah. All in favor of approvals, please say aye.
Aye.
And opposed, same sign. Thank you. That motion carries. And then we have a consent item to approve the minutes of our last meeting, which was July 21, 2025.
I'll move the approval. I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion regarding those minutes? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
And opposed, same sign, and that motion carries as well. And next, we get to hear a little bit about the provider scorecards analysis by Bill.
Okay, hello. If we could all jump ahead to attachment B, that'll be the information that you need. Apologies for not being.
Was that
there
B?
on the Contract, or on the agenda.
Which
Do I got that
attachment? Is
right?
it attachment
The
B?
one on the- Yeah, there you
Right.
go. There you go. You got your hand right.
Okay.
Yeah, okay, want to see it?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm getting it.
So, after our last meeting, I was talking with Amy, and she's like, you realize that if we give everybody the full scorecards, that would be about 450 pages. And we're like, oh, wow, I didn't think that through. So, in order to make it more manageable for y'all, we created this document. And the thing that I want to talk about today is this column that says provider scorecard. And you may remember the scorecard that was presented last time. If not, I'll get a copy to you. But what we did is we went through and anytime that somebody would score, there were, different elements, and some of them would be not applicable depending on the program. Some were agencies scored down. So it might be a 10 out of 12 or something like that. It didn't rise to the level of something that we don't want to continue contracting with the agency. But we just wanted to share the overall data. Just so you know, the most common reason for scoring down was something that was a later addition into the scorecard. And that had to do with the LRE and the doing site reviews for agencies. One thing that they failed to do was do site reviews and training requirements. So what we did is we sent all the providers an attestation, rather because it was too late in the year for us to do the audit. An attestation saying, hey, that you are having your staff complete the trainings as required in the contract. And the most common one, the reason for the score down is because we did not get that attestation renewed or returned. So for that one, it was 85 providers out of the 150 some. So I don't know, I didn't know if you wanted to get into that level of detail for the reason why some of those numbers were not.
Yes, why?
Yeah, so that was the most common one. The other one is we had one provider that didn't give us proper insurance. And it took us 6 different times to request that before we finally got that right information. 4 providers where we had issues with claims being submitted in a timely manner and correct. 1 where when claim issues were identified, that they got cleaned up in a timely manner. So 4 where when we had a request for like an audit, either the LRE or the state or somebody, we requested information, most of the time progress notes, that it took multiple times for us to get that information back. And then the last one, we have 4 providers that scored down because of timeliness of access to service. So when we refer somebody to a provider, they have 14 days from that to have that first service, and the standard is 95%. It's very high. But we had 4 providers that didn't meet that 95% standard. other than that, it was pretty good.
To answer your question
No.
on training, the majority of reasons was a miscommunication who was to ensure that appropriate training was done, LRE, us. It's my belief, regardless of what the regional entity believes, it's my responsibility to ensure that every provider that we have a contract meets the training requirements, regardless of who's supposed to ensure it above us. So one of the things we've done is to implement our own, work with the region of who's doing what, but in the current climate of who's gonna be a regional entity in a couple of years, we just need to keep focused on it. And so what Bill was doing is when you look at, when we talk about this new table about renewal of contracts, we have a scorecard number in there. And if you read it, you go, so 7 out of 8, like, was the one thing we missed important? Or somebody has 9 out of 12. Well, how come only some folks have 6 things? And it's all related to the scorecard itself and what's applicable and not applicable. We also have a detailed report that Bill gives me and others to review of every single contract in the grid of what they were or were not compliant with. And so the next go around, we can find a way to have all of that data together so you can see it. It's an interesting thing when you look at provider scorecards, because our providers are subject to, I don't know, about 1 million reviews. And they have everybody telling them stuff, right? So when they're out of compliance with one element, it's a miracle if it's only, we can find anything. But to what degree does it require follow-up? And so we're kind of looking at which elements are weighted differently, and we're not there yet in terms of, obviously somebody has like a complaint against them, or they've broken the law, that's higher than forgot to send in the attestation that they are in compliance with a regulation. Now, I will tell you, and I'm not just grandstanding because there are providers here, that if we had training reciprocity throughout the state, that a lot of this stuff would be or collected information from the same CMHs in our region for the same group of providers. And so this is one of the elements in our system that has to improve. I'm not gonna wait for them to fix it. I'm gonna streamline, work with Bill and contracts and our provider network to get the information we need. But since it was on this other document, I asked Bill to come in and say, hey, give a general review on what types of things are out of compliance. And we obviously would suspend a contract if there was a potential of consumer harm or abuse or something drastic pending any investigation that really isn't part of the contractual scorecard. That happens throughout the year through incident reporting and being aware of it. But we want to use the scorecard at the end of the year to determine, yeah, we should continue this contract, or there are things to work on. So it's supposed to be both a compliance tool and a performance improvement tool. So what you don't have in front of you is the detailed analysis for every one of the contracts of their 12 items. And, we gave you the general score, and I wanted to make sure Bill had a chance to explain what that means.
So Bill, how often will these numbers be reviewed, or is it sort of an ongoing after the improvement occurs, it changed, or how does that?
Well, the original intent was to do this annually and
Okay.
then to have it ready by June or July
Okay.
for, to the intent, so you guys have the information about, so I can make a decision. But we have talked about maybe is this something we want to do quarterly or more often? So, but then of course I freak out about that because that's once a year.
It's at least annual to match the contracting process, which I'll talk about. We're gonna switch to all contracts being annual because some are every 2 years. I want to switch that. That comes up later in the agenda, but at least annually. But we don't want to wait till the end of the year if someone's out of compliance in one of the key areas of the scorecard. So, we may end up doing a sampling model, or I don't think we want to review every contract every quarter. I think that I would have to have a team 3 times big, but we can do, we have a compliance committee that looks at stuff. We can do kind of sampling to do that, but at least annually.
question. It's not the board's responsibility to make those decisions. We simply approve contracts as you present them.
Correct.
So let's say this is an annual contract. It's good for a year. If a particular provider goes out of compliance in the middle of the year, you're going to take whatever action
Exactly right.
you think is appropriate for suspending services. We're not involved in that
Correct.
until you decide you want to terminate the contract.
Correct.
And then we would approve the
Yeah,
termination, right?
and yeah, well, you would approve terminations in certain circumstances, like if you'll see later in the meeting today, probably the next agenda item, is that we have a list of contracts we're not renewing.
Mhm.
And there's many reasons why, and I don't want the board in the position to vote on not renewing contracts that your CEO has pushed forward, that they're end of the contract and we're not renewing it.
Mhm.
The time you'd get involved is if I have to eliminate a contract during the contractual, like a valid current contract, then I'd want the board to be aware of it, because that provider will be clearly aware of it, and you should know. But, so we're talking about the recommendation to renew contracts. And I'd get you more involved if we're eliminating a contract in the middle of a contract year. Because that would have to be as a result of the contract, the provider saying, don't want to do it anymore. Can't do it anymore for whatever reason, or we say for various. The bigger issue that we're gonna have is, will a provider still want to contract with us if they don't fix the rates and various other things in the state? That to me is the more likely issue of, can we continue the contract? Not us saying, we don't want to continue the contract.
Well, you've done that with Robert Brown, though.
We sure did.
Yeah.
And a joint statement, and just an update on that, we're looking for a new usage of Robert Brown to meet some other residential needs. And so we'll be able to turn that into another resource in the community that we don't have. We're looking at some high behavioral complex DD cases. So as that comes up, you'll be involved, but that's exciting news on that. It's a repurposing of a contract that can't continue.
And you
Now,
need-
another question. This is just a partial list of our providers, right?
Mhm.
Because I noticed that there's no specialized residential in here
Yeah.
or Holland Hospital.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll bring those next month.
We broke them up into 2 months.
Yeah.
Because there's several hundred contracts.
Yeah.
So the residential provider ones and the renewal happen next month.
Mhm.
Okay, there are some changes to some of the residential providers in this meeting because we had to change the rate in the current. And we're dealing with a particular thing, but we're gonna deal with the residential system next month. Because there's so many of them.
So this being called the August group was
Yes.
just
Yeah,
randomly
Yeah, I
that you
should've-
selected
yeah.
this.
yeah, so we kind of broke them out, specialized and AFB homes and then everybody else. That's kind of how we broke it out.
I really appreciate this scorecard.
Good, thank you.
Helps me visualize the oversight that you guys are providing. So I think that's,
See the
yeah,
name
okay.
and all that.
Thank you.
Oh, very well.
And that's how we got those scores in hand. So, you know, there is a detailed report that we can show you. I'm just being careful that in a public meeting, I don't have all of these different provider scores up on a screen when I haven't talked to them yet.
Mhm.
You know, like I mean, they're aware of their score, they have, you know, but. So we're just being careful how we present that information.
Very good. Any other questions for Bill or Dr. Bashirs on this?
I have one quick question. I guess it's tangentially related to this. The building over on the Nadervelt Engineering Building over by the Culvers. we have some of our staff in that building, and there's
Oh,
also
yeah.
a drop-in program. Is that for SUD?
Yes,
Okay, I just happened to go by there
Yeah.
and noticed the sign up front.
yeah.
Yeah.
That's one of our newer things, we help them get over there. And there's a drop-in and we have substance use staff in there
Mm,
collaborating, yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
That's working out well.
How's it working?
So we're waiting on internet. So our staff will very want to get internet. But so far was over, kind of by Engagement Church. And they moved in there, they just got, the permitting issues, done with the township, so they're just kind of restarting their activities. But on Friday, I'm gonna present to the full board and that'll be part of it on Friday.
Great.
Now, is SOBAR a wordplay on sober for SUD?
So it's a, community recovery center, so
Yeah.
a place for people to meet and, find community within like a recovery, within their recovery, so.
Great.
Okay. Thank you. Is there any old business we need to cover today? Hearing none, let's move on to new business. The August 2025 amended, renewed and ending service contracts, Dr. Shears.
Yeah, so I have also some folks in the audience that run those programs that have specific questions that I can go through that I don't know the answer to. But what you have is our system of starting in attachment A. First, any contract that's amended, right? Then renewals. And then we're gonna talk about renewals in a larger group. So you have renewals broke out in two different groups. You have them in attachment A and attachment B. The renewals in attachment A that are in, you probably can't see because you don't have the color, if you look on the screen. And the aqua are renewals that had some changes in it. When we get to attachment B, it's renewals, a whole list of contracts that had no changes in it, that are being renewed in the exact same circumstance. So that's why there's two different sets of renewals. And then after that, we of course get to attachment D for new contracts. So out of the amended contracts, those are in the, what do you call that color? Is that like orange or yellow? Salmon.
There you go.
Salmon.
Salmon.
Are a couple of contracts where there are revisions or amendments for very specific reasons. So like I'll start with MOCA, David's House. Well, let's start with the first one. Community programs, Meredith Health. This is a rate adjustment. And it's Joel, is this one of yours?
Yes.
Yeah, to align the rates with the regional rates for substance use. So maybe you could explain to the board.
So we have providers throughout the state of Michigan, and one of the things we've agreed on as a region is to pay whatever rate they have in their home region. So in this case, I believe it's Oakland County that this provider is located. So this is a rate adjustment to go from our LRE regional rate to the Oakland County rate. And it's a provider for detox, and it's one that I don't think we're going to need to use. But we've been having difficulty maintaining detox providers, so I want to make sure that we maintain this provider.
So does that make sense to the committee? It's kind of a realignment to the regional rates. Now, in substance use program rates, they're a lot more fixed than other rates. And there's a lot more schedules that say, here's what's allowable. And that works if it's a fair rate, right? If it doesn't, and then you have one body setting all the rates for a region, that could be problematic. But this is to kind of get that aligned. Then you have MOCA, where MOCA took over two homes that were previously owned by another vendor. And this is just to expand their contract to include them in our list. Did we already have people at these places? We already did. And so it's to change the ownership of it to MOCA was this one of the Samaritas. They stopped doing that type of work and MOCA came in, said they would take over those two houses. This is to adjust the contract to reflect that change in ownership. David's House Ministries is a new client going into a new rate to support this person. We're going through the process of looking at our contract and how we spell out rates. You both want individual kind of rates, but setting rates so that we don't have to keep bringing back contracts if we don't have outlined in our current contract, like, oh, this is an increase in staffing, which is gonna require a higher rate per day for this person. And so you'll start seeing in September, October, and moving in, how we're gonna address that issue. Right now, we have one for Benjamin's Hope here too. We have to bring in the contract under the previous board's instruction that any change in the financials at all had to come before the board for approval, even if it was $1. And so the problem with that, or I wouldn't say it's a problem, the issue with that is that we have constant changes with the level of care somebody needs. We went through some of that the last finance committee, kind of our conceptualization of that. And currently, unless we change the way we write the contracts and the way that you approve them, I have to bring them back every time there's a change in that individual client's rate in the setting. Especially if it goes beyond any of the rates that provider was getting in the past. And so we're starting to see the kind of tension with that in here. This is a client that's at David's House, and there's another one here for Benjamin's Hope the same way, gonna need a very specific level of care, and we had to ensure that we have approval to increase the rate for them and for that setting. So that's the story with David's House. There, and also the Benjamin Hope is to add one-on-one staffing. We're gonna try to work out a way where changes in the client's level of care is included enough in the contract, so we don't have to keep bringing them back to you every time we're changing an element of a contract, especially if it's within the approved budget you've already approved for the year. And so I'm starting this migration from too much information to very specific information for you to look at, and changing the way we do contracting so that we don't have to worry about if there's an increase in somebody's level of care. Is it in the contract in a specific way? Oh, it's not, we gotta bring it back. And you're going, Michael, just increase the service already and stay in the budget. Right? So we're in that process of transition on how to best do it. And you'll see more of this next month, but how we're gonna deal with residential contracts and rates. But that's what the MOCA contract is about. I mean, MOCA was different. That's what David's House is about, Benjamin's House, Hope's about. Number 4 is just adding houses and locations to our network, and that's what, is it Zuri? Is that how we say it? Zuri Communities. And same thing with, the Guidings AFC and 6. So in those first 6, you have adding locations, changing licensure, or increasing the rate to cover a level of care need. And there are individual sheets in your packet on all of those. But I just thought I'd give you a general summary. And before I get to some of the other ones, if you had any questions about that group. And again, we're going to get better, Madam Chair, at putting this together so that we don't have to come back every single time there's a change in the client if the dollar amount changes. We tried with thresholds in the past. We have them still up there, like $0 to $8 million. That's just a way, like, this is the potential impact, but you still have to do utilization management on it to make sure it doesn't go to those extreme. But we're not booking expenditures in our financials of an upper threshold of, say, 250,000, for that. So we have to figure out a way to articulate that more clearly. And that's what we'll be working on. And this process is getting there. So then you have some renewals with some changes. So ARC of Michigan to provide, this is for guardianship services. And basically we have to deal with the rate to get them in line with the rest of the contracts that they have that do a similar service. So this helps us assist people to get on guardianship, which is well needed. Number 8 is that we actually pay for a person that works up the hill over here to help people get on Medicaid. They're the only entity, Health and Human Services over here that can actually get people on Medicaid. I wish we could. And so we have an employee that we sponsor that is co-located here that we help with Medicaid determination and eligibility, which is vital when people fall off Medicaid or they have spend downs. So this is able to renew the contract, and we're kind of dealing with that, but I didn't know if there was an increase in rate on this one besides just renewing it. So I don't think there's an increase in rate on this one.
Is this person considered an employee of ours, of the county?
Well, no. We contract with that department
Mhm.
to have this person. And, you know, I mean, we did this when I was here the last time. We got one. And it was really because we didn't have the general fund. We need to make sure people get on Medicaid. Now it's the same thing. We need to make sure people get on Medicaid. Or they could lose their Medicaid services. But, you know, I could justify 3 of these people. You know, one is okay, but this is the prime issue that we deal with. We had a meeting this morning, the leadership group, we're looking at the spend down list, who's on spend downs, who's meeting them, why it takes so long, and there are all kinds of reasons why that happens. But I will tell you, people stay, especially with the federal changes that they are talking about, that they passed. Every quarter, we'd have to determine who's on Medicaid or not. Now, I wish we could do that. Our support coordinators, case man, but we're not allowed to. So we have to go through another agency to do that. And I could justify easily three of these positions.
This is a block grant from MDHHS. Do you have the ability to add personnel then under that grant?
I don't believe so at the moment. So, no. We will have to look into the impact, you know, obviously on that, but we kind of need the state to do a fix too. I mean, it shouldn't be up to the CMH system to have to hire folks for them to deal with the increase in demand of how often someone is determined to be eligible enough. I mean, I'm hoping the state has a plan, and we'll have to look into it, to increase the amount of people to help with determination of Medicaid verification, right? To be on Medicaid, but I don't know how they pay for that, since the actual Medicaid, you know, so it has unfortunately a real negative impact. You cut the amount of people that have to determine who's on Medicaid, but you need more of them because the frequency of reevaluation is more constant now. I mean, we had a hard time, we still do, with folks after COVID getting realigned and how that's determined. So, but that's what that's looking at, is to renew that. So the Saunders Center for Neural Development, this is to renew the contract and to add a service location for ABA services. And so there's an additional location being added, so it's different than the regular, I would have just had another regular renewal if nothing changed. And so we'll have to determine if this committee or the board wants to know, besides information only on the list of providers that added a location this month, but were still expected to stay within the budget that you approved. Because under the way things were happening, we were asked to bring any change to a contract. And I'm thinking with this committee and the scope of the board, us saying, hey, here are the contracts that had amendments that in a list information only, not a vote, that added locations. Because the expectation is, Dr. Bashir, is you have to stay within the budget. If a contract has a different dollar amount, or we're increasing something past a certain, then we'll bring it here for an approval. But there are several of these things that it's really like, gee, it's information, but there is no budgetary impact unless the utilization increases beyond our budget, which can happen any year with any of our, just based on utilization. And so how we deal with keeping track of being over budget in certain areas versus approving every time we add a location, I think are two different things.
Just off the top of my head, and I don't know if you want all this right now.
No, yeah, this is
The
why we
one
have.
thing that is of real interest to me as we look at that, of course, the budget, yes, but in addition, like, where are the services located? How
Mhm.
close are we to home? Are we keeping our residents as close as we can and the services that they need and
Mhm.
support that they need also as close as we can?
Yeah, and we should bring that information to the program, the Performance and Quality Improvement Subcommittee. Because it is a contractual requirement too, for us to look at geography, there are actual rules to that. And we could easily have that cross over to this committee and the full board. What I was getting at is I want to get to an end state, not put it in a formal recommendation for you to consider. I just wanted to talk about it a little bit. We're bringing in a contract that's just adding a location. Does that require board approval? Right? Instead of information, like I'll always inform you. You'll have a list. Here are the locations we added in our service array. If it's existing like if Krista builds another 2 homes, please find the land to do that. Then it's like, okay, we have to keep bringing it back to say, and one more, and one more, and one more. It's my job to keep track of the utilization as it's part of the budget. But it's kind of labor intensive for us to kind of keep bringing back a sheet and an item of, and I'd rather just put it in a table saying, like I kind of did with the renewals, changes in contracts that did not result in an increase in the budget or something like that, right? Versus, so you're aware of all the stuff, but you don't have to forward for approval to the board of the CMH full board of, we're approving that Krista can add a house. And to me, that's too in the weeds. Yeah, and that's my job with my staff to ensure that that's happening. And so I've been showing you the processes we're utilizing, like scorecards and this and other stuff to say, yeah, due diligence is happening. So what I'd like to do for the finance committee, the next one is bring back a proposal for that to consider of things that, what is the scope? Because remember, I was asked what the scope is of the group. What is the scope? What requires a recommendation for a vote and what's information only that we can keep sharing? But we're not having to vote on it. Where before, we'd have board members that would say, I want a cost benefit analysis of the entire thing. So this person thought he needed all of the information as if he's making a determination on the totality of the viability of the contract. I'm going, well, isn't that my job? But things to consider.
Put it in a different perspective. We approved a contract for a psychiatric hospital in Indiana. The board approves the contract because we have a responsibility to approve the contract. Whether you ever send anyone there or not is independent of board action.
That's right.
If you have someone in crisis and you determine that's the best
right.
place for them, you send them there. Now that
Correct.
you have a contract in place.
Yes,
And it should be the same thing for
exactly. Right.
IDD services for residential.
Yeah, so when we have changes, and that's why I'm gonna get the contracts right, so that when there's changes in a client's condition that require an immediate action, I'm not gonna hold and say to something like, Harbor House, you can't do a 1-to-1 until board approval. That doesn't happen. We do that. And then we look at the impact of it. Yeah, I just have to, you're in the room, so I gotta pick on you. So that is exactly right. That's what I'm looking for.
And frankly, as far as I'm concerned, if you want to establish a schedule of rates for a particular provider, and then if you assign someone to live there in rate category A2, and later they change to a B6.
That's right.
So what? I mean,
Exactly.
we have to provide those services if
That's
they're
right.
appropriate. And as frankly, as far as the budget impact, we don't really have control over that.
Right.
We have to provide the services, and it's the region's responsibility to make sure we have enough money to do that.
Right.
So Dr. Bashir, you mentioned a proposal to this committee. I think that's a really good idea, and especially we've got two members on here.
That's
tonight.
right.
It would be nice, maybe if we would look at that
Sure.
whenever
before-
you're ready, if
Yes.
it's next month or
Sure.
down the road. And
Well, I have it ready by next month. You get it before then to look at.
Mhm.
Like I have a draft in my computer now, but yeah, I think the full finance committee looking at it because it's helping to shape the role and function, not only of the committee, but the full board.
Mhm.
And so I think getting that clear and having a rate schedule, having the ability to move within rate schedules without approval to do so, if it's retrospective or not, is really needed. Because ultimately I have to ensure that we stay within the budget or the impact to over expenditures to the budget. And as long as you have information, you have oversight, you can always ask a question. But with me, you'll always get too much information. But we'll put that together for consideration of the next finance committee. And I'll even do a test run because we have so many residential contracts coming up for renewal next month. I could say this would be example of. Like, I'll kind of replicate what I want to do have a hybrid and have this. And then you can see what it would feel and look like even when you're getting my proposal to do so. You're like, oh, here's how we would carry it out. And we started this committee, you just didn't know it yet until you get to the next document. I kind of started doing that. It's like, okay, this is what I'm talking about. Probably doesn't need full approval, but just information. You'll see coming up, but the rest of these, one of them I want to highlight is 11. Do you remember Dr. Lubers came to our last meeting? This is to extend his contract out for another year. And it's under renewal because it technically ended. So sometimes if it ended, because a lot of the contracts that we're choosing to renew had a couple of years. So this is to extend out their IBH's contract, and they were essential part with our hardworking staff in getting that quality bonus for the CCBHC, which by the way, went from 300 and something thousand to 500,000. So we got additional revenue for quality bonus for CCBHC. The way it works is if other CCBHCs in the state fail to meet the quality bonus, they repool the money and redistribute it out. So we were given more. I think it was like, was it 500 and it's like
513.
513, it was 300 and something. But IBH was essential in helping us with the data collection and report writing to receive that bonus and other quality metrics that we're doing. You saw the residential analysis and stuff. And our plan is in some of the areas they're working with us, we're teaching our staff to do. So that eventually some of that can migrate somewhere else. But until recently, I know Tony's in the, we didn't have the people and we didn't have enough people to even do any of this stuff. And we've hired a team in IT and information services that also do quality metrics, and they're working alongside with this group, IBH, to learn what they can learn. Some of it IBH is gonna just continue to do as a third party. But that's what that is. It's a renewal of that contract to keep their services intact.
Is this like a retainer?
Yeah, so like you see the threshold.
Yeah.
So like it's up to a certain amount, but last year they did about 120,000 worth of work.
Okay.
So we just kind of say, well, what's the historical utilization?
Right.
Believe me, if I had the money, I'd have them doing about $900,000 worth of services for us, but it does give them a threshold.
Good.
So that's the amended and renewal contracts there, but there's also another attachment with that. Sorry, this is kind of a, and so if you look at attachment B, besides the ones in blue, you can't see or highlighted, these are all of the contracts we're seeking renewal for that did not have a change in the contractual language or the fee or the rate. With obviously the exception of the ones that are in blue that I already went over, we'll just put them on the same list. So if you go to attachment B, you can see the amount of contract, and I think it's double sided. So it's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pages of renewals. And that's not even half of our contracts. And so what you have here is a listing of all of the contracts that we are recommending renewal that has already been approved within the budget you approved last month at the full board. So the 2026 budget assumes these expenditures in them based on historical data. And then we have to keep track if they're utilized more or less for various reasons, and that's what we do all year long. So I'm trying to get you to the point where when we have renewals like this with no changes, this is like the list you would get. And it would be information only so that you see the activity. So you're never losing track of the overall activity or volume of our provider network. But you don't have to get as specific for each one if there are no changes. So not having a one pager for every one of these. In fact, just having them on a table because they've already been approved by this board once before. And it's within the 2026 budget. And so this is a highlight of some of the direction I want to go for the renewal of contracts or changes within a contract, like adding a location. It would look like a table like this. And so you can see there's quite a few contract providers. And you can see, by the way, Bill's department isn't like 70 people, but you can see that there's a scorecard for the majority of these things. All of these vendors on every page. I don't know if you got one for everyone, did you?
I missed the Y. That was just.
You missed the YMCA? That's it, you're fired. But never, I'd quit before I'd fire you. The reality is this. Look at that. I mean, there is tons of renewals. Do you like this format? Of renewals?
Yeah, I think it streamlines things for us.
I do too.
Gets us out of the weeds.
Yeah.
Okay, and so when you're approving the agenda item, this agenda item for renewals, there was one other list that I wanted to bring your attention to, which I want to remove from the motion. And it's for contracts or non-renewals. You should have in your packet attachment C. And what it does is simply list the contracts we're not recommending for renewal. But then in the box, there are the possible reasons. I did have a version where every provider had a specific reason next to them. I don't think that's appropriate in a public, so what I want to make sure we do is if there are questions of, I mean, obviously, if somebody's not being renewed because of harm to a consumer or a violation of the contract that violates the rights, that gets handled in a different venue anyways, rights of consumers and things like that. So you get that information in a different way through the recipient rights department and other rights. So I decided to use a general statement that these list of providers, are not being renewed because it could have been like lack of capacity. We didn't use them, or they can't expand, or there was a contract issue that we couldn't resolve and we decided to say, we're done. Just know that we have an internal process that if we're having a contractual issue with the provider, we will attempt to meet with them multiple times, multiple chances to try to fix the issue. And if not, then obviously I may wait to the end of the year not to renew the contract because none of the clients were harmed or anything like that. But they're not providing the quality of services that we want or can't comply with the billing requirements. I can't tell you how much Amy's staff and other staff are meeting with folks, trying to keep up with the changes of this. So we give a lot of latitude. So the primary reason why a contract doesn't get renewed is because of lack of utilization or availability. Very few contracts, since I've been here, are recommended not for renewal based on contract noncompliance. It's usually about 10%. And of them, we try to deal with that. But this is one of those examples where it's a list. Because you might get a call as the board chair, Tom, from a provider. Hey, Dr. Bashir is not renewing my contract, right? And the specific conversations about that can happen, but not at a public meeting. I didn't want to have the whole thing out there because let's just say I don't ask for renewal for something, that could hurt their chances for a contract with somebody else and they may not know. So that's why there's this general statement and I'm over explaining it. So when you see it in the future, you know, we know that. The vast majority of these are due to, non-utilization or very little utilization of the contract. And us expanding that service to larger providers is the bulk of those. There's only 10% or some element of our contract compliance, just either billing or or other things we just couldn't get them to do.
So you would anticipate giving that to us for information only,
Correct.
not as an item that we
Correct.
include in a motion to go to the full board?
Yes, because I don't want you in a position of, because if you have to vote on, it, then, you know, Robert, you could say, well, I vote that you keep that contract with somebody,
Mhm.
right?
And that negates all of.
Right,
the
that,
utility.
yeah, so there's like, well, okay, well, if we're gonna do that, then, okay, I won't ever publish the list everywhere, and they'll just disappear. Because these are non-renewals,
Mhm.
these are not ending a contract while contracted. To me, that's a different thing. That's more severe. And usually, it's the provider saying they can't do it anymore. It's not us saying you can't do it. Because the rate is horrible, or something's changed in their life, or they can't do it. That's when you have in-contract terminations usually. So this would be information only, and I would ask that it be separated out of the suggested motion. We have it in there now,
All right, and we are
there.
probably at a point of, that we're ready for a
Yep.
motion. Suggestion is that we take that clause out of the motion.
I'll move that we do that.
Okay,
I'll second.
all right, so it's been moved and supported to approve the August 2025 amended and renewed contracts as presented and forward to the full board with a recommendation for approval. Is there any further discussion? All in favor, please indicate by saying aye,
I,
and opposed, same sign. That motion carries.
now I do have a question, if I may, Madam Chair. On this item that we removed, the non-renewals. Let's say for the sake of argument, one of these providers, now let's call them, they've expired, they haven't been terminated.
Correct,
And they've expired and we're just not renewing them.
correct.
What if one of those providers had a problem with the rate we were paying not being adequate? And they said with you, we're not interested in having it renewed. That would be critical information for the board to know that there's that dynamic is out there.
Yeah, you know, the way to deal with that, I was thinking that through, is maybe provider initiated termination or non-renewal, or CMH initiated non-renewal, to kind of deal with some of that stuff, because we ran into issues all the time where the rate is not adequate.
Yeah.
To cover the cost of care. And so sometimes the provider I mean, there's only so many yard sales you can have, or fundraising you can have, right? But we can find a way to get that information to the board, specifically. What I just didn't want is the specific reasons in a public meeting for the world to see, because they don't know all that dynamic. We tried 9 times, or the provider tried for 4 years to do it with the rate. And so I can find a way to deal with kind of provider initiated ending of a contract or non-renewal or terminated, or CMH initiated, and find ways to communicate with the board. At any time, a board member can call, if you're not voting on something, and ask a specific question. Like if a provider comes to you, you can contact. I'm at liberty to get into some of the detail there. But trying to avoid it, it'd be like renewing a staff contract. We go to closed session for some of that stuff. So. Did that answer it? Yeah, I'm thinking, okay.
Thank you. Then we'll look at the new service contracts, which is our attachment D.
I believe we have 4, Madam Chair. First one is from our former employee, Beth Turkey. She used to run our DD division. She retired. And there are people that are interested in hiring her to do independent facilitation of person-centered planning. And so we have an open panel policy here at CMH, and we didn't find any reason to not include her in the panel and to give her the same exact rate that we give the other organization that does that in the panel. So what this is, to provide independent facilitation for folks, for Beth Durkee. Allow her to do that, and there's a budgeted amount based on up to 10 clients annually. We don't know if it'll be 1, be 20. But we have the Arc of Michigan that does some of that for us too, so we just took the same rate. You know, it's actually pretty rare that people use independent facilitation to run their person-centered plan. It's a right that every consumer has, to have somebody independent from the CMH staff run that meeting. And that's what this is. What it isn't, I want to be clear to the board, it's not advocacy. So Beth or anybody else can't go into an independent facilitation meeting and advocate for services for the consumer or the client. They're there to simply facilitate and arrange the meeting. And that's a huge distinction. And so we want to make that, but that's what that contract is, you know, we have an open panel. Beth retired. She knows our system. There's a family that wants to use her as an independent facilitator. And so we're recommending that we do so. Now, when you get to, I think, Global Clinical and City of the Hill, I think Katie's here, those are the same things. We extended through a request for proposal, an increase in our provider network for psychiatric services for children and adults. As you remember, we even tried to do a millage on this. We have some millage people, but we couldn't get people in certain quadrants of our county. So we actually engaged in a formal RFP process to like, hey, world, will anybody come and help deliver services in certain areas of our county? Because our open panel system wasn't working. And so Global is a company that is going to set up shop in Ottawa County to provide the services listed here. Katie, I think we have them targeted for what, Grand Haven?
Yeah, when we did the RFP, we really asked for, agencies that would be focused on the north, really the northeast part of the county. We used to have a provider, up there, they closed their Grand Haven office, and so we're seeing all of those folks right now, either calling, or telehealth, which isn't great, and so, they are planning on doing that for us, so. Okay.
And they were from the other side of the state and they're gonna move over and set up shop. And when I,
Work in Sweden.
oh, they do? Yeah.
And that's primarily done in the school ones. But they have the ability to outpatient the public health stuff for.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, City on Hill is specifically for adults.
Yeah, so City Hill's right here, you know,
So
Yeah.
is it Zealand, the city on Hill? So what agency actually is it?
it's,
It's the health,
It's
the health clinic at City on the Hill.
the health clinic. Okay, so it's not MOCA.
no,
Okay. So that's who we would actually be.
Yeah, it's City on the
Contract.
Hill Health Clinic, I think is what they go.
City
by,
on the Hill
is the
Health
DB, yeah.
Okay.
DBA.
now, it was right before your reemergence on our board. But we actually did a millage contract for a year for City on the Hill to duplicate these services before we had this RFP. What's gonna be nice is they'll be able to over from off a millage onto this Medicaid contract, thus ensuring it continuing for Medicaid residents, participants. So it's a nice way of getting, we use millage to fill a need. And they're serving a lot of folks, but as those folks get on Medicaid, they can stay right there under contract and receive the same service by the same team. Yeah, so I was very happy that they were selected. We didn't have a huge amount of people that wanted to do it, but we had some good ones. And then Tony, can you explain this last one for me? Because you've tried to explain this to me in some audit we have to do, a vendor agreement or a tech audit.
We're required to have third party superior assessment
It's number 4 on your list here,
and
Bishop.
required by the LRE. We show binary services is when.
So this is a required audit we have to do. And
Anyway,
it's real, yeah. So security risk assessment as required by the LRE, which by the way, our own county IT cannot do. I checked that out. Cause I'm like, wait a minute, we're paying, but this is something that has to be independent of even them. Cause I was all about to say, I ain't spending the dime, I'm already spending it, but Tony convinced me this is the way to go, and we have to do it this way. And it'll be easy, but that's what those are. And so those are the contracts, you know, you got two that are looking at the expansion of our, therapy services, one on a security, kind of arrangement, and one for independent facilitation to that. And new contracts would never be subject to my theory of what you approve all new contracts with all of the data. Cause that to me is the first real deep dive we do, because they're new to us. And then if we're renewing, then we're continuing or it's altering, but all new contracts are not part of what I'm thinking about conceptually and what's on the list or not. You'll get all new contracts like this.
All right,
Right, I'll move that we approve the new service contracts as set forth in attachment B.
Support.
it's been moved and supported. Any further discussion? All in favor, please indicate by saying aye,
Aye.
and opposed, same sign. Thank you, that motion carries. And now we'll move to our July financial statement. We have Amy here to talk us through this.
Okay, so we have our statement of activities through July, end of July, and for both the mental health SUD fund and the millage and grants fund. Mental health and SUD fund, you'll see is the actual percent to target percent is a little over this month, but if you recall in June, we were very close and just under. And these targets are ones that we established based on historical data to kind of bring us closer to how we'll land at the end. I feel the 5% kind of looking at some of the activity, we did have an extra week of payroll that was paid in July. So that kind of increased the balance of payroll, and you'll see that our salaries, benefits, expenditures are a little, it's only $1 million under, whereas last month we were like 1.7 million. It kind of fluctuates based on the time card period. We had an increase, June, we experienced a slowing in contracted service billing that's kind of catching up now. So it's, I think between June and July, those percentages are still pretty close within our trend and what we're using as a target for where we'll end year end. And I think the big numbers, as we continue to move forward is our, comparing our year-to-date budget with of revenues with our year-to-date actuals for expenditures. We're still showing a positive trend there. The numbers are close. And our revenues are based on, some of like CCBHC revenues are based on actual service activity that we have to achieve. But our general Medicaid, Healthy Michigan and autism revenues and, those other revenues above CCBHC are all fixed numbers. So that kind of, we're getting close, I'll just say, long story short, for that, and feeling that we have a good sense of where we'll be, and we have 2 months left to kind of achieve those goals. And I think the end of August will be an even better indicator of our actuals to our target, where we're a couple months in now to the new electronic health record, and providers are catching up on getting billing in and getting claims processed. So, and we're, catching up on our processing. Millage fund is right on target and in a healthy position. So nothing stands out for the millage and grants fund.
Question for you. Let's look at CCBHC. We have expenses that we have incurred because we have fixed overhead And now we have people who come, we provide counseling services to the, or other services. So we book expenses for the month.
Mhm.
What is the lag from the time we actually incur an expense during the month of July to the time we get the money reimbursed through the LR? Well, that comes directly from Lansing, right?
It does not yet. Right now it comes through the LRE and it has been variable. That's been one of the challenges and why we're transitioning to direct pay. Actually, so starting October 1st, it will be a direct pay and we'll be able to bill every Thursday and get compensated within the next pay period, anything that's accepted
Direct pay from the state.
from the state. Right now, the way it works is we submit the encounters monthly. The LRE checks those, they validate, we have a reconciliation. And then we kind of submit a projection and they reconcile that and pay us. So it's usually 2 months in arrears for the supplemental payment.
Okay, so that could be why the revenue for CCBHC is only 4.48. Actually, it's higher than our expenses year to date, 3.238.
Well, those are SUD, those are not itemized CCBHC expenses.
Right,
Yep.
Okay.
But I am working on adjusting that for next fiscal year to bring the CCBHC out. I actually shared that with Michael. I have it in the works, but it's still.
So we'll have a P&L for that.
Yes, we'll be able to kind of track the revenues closer to the expenses.
And then for SUD, we have separate income stream for SUD, right? And can we do a P&L for that product line?
They don't separate out Medicaid and HMP anymore, but a lot of the grants we have, like block grant, PA2 funding, that is specific to the SUD expenditures. I could look at that and see about doing like a allocated portion of the other funds and then the actual SUD only revenues. We can look at that and try to tie some of that closer together, but, yeah.
I guess you could argue it'd be nice to know where we are there, but
For each,
in the
right?
grand scheme of things, is it going to change? We still have to do SUD services. We still
Right.
have to do MI services. We still have to do IDD services. The CCBHC, as long as we're in that program, we still have to do that.
Mhm.
So,
Well, and, when I started, it was paid separately and we reconciled SUD funds separately than mental health funds. And, they consolidated that all, so all of our reports were still separating it out, even though we're paid in one lump sum. Yeah, I don't know, we can test a few things. I do think from a CCBHC perspective, because we are at risk for overspend, it might be a good thing to track. So we're monitoring and making sure that we are receiving the revenues we need to cover what we're expending. So, we have been reporting our CCBHC expenditures as our revenues, equivalent to the revenues, and then everything else is, because everything else is picked up by Medicaid, in that regard. Or the surplus revenue would be charged back to Medicaid. But, there's an opportunity to also achieve carry forward funding that has that we've earned from saving on our supplemental dollars, but then also tracking and monitoring what we might be at risk for if we overspend. So I don't know if that answers your question or just leaves you with more questions, but.
and I'm not asking you to generate a whole lot of work.
Yeah, no, it is we do monitor that and, it's just a matter of getting it in a, easily readable format and,
I think what makes the discussion hard is because of the variables beyond our control about how much revenue we're gonna get. I can never answer the question, where are we at?
So it's a moving target. Yeah.
And it's the most frustrating thing, because you wouldn't run your house this way. But, and so even when you look at this report, you're like, are we $7 million in a deficit? No, it's a bunch of variables that are moving on here, and I know that Amy, myself, others were working really hard to figure out where we truly are in terms of budgetary position within margins. And for me, as long as we can stay within that 5% wiggle room, either way, we're there. In fact, in our agreement with the regional entity, 5% is a number that if we're involved in, we want to be under 5% in terms of over expenditures. That's what happened last year, right? And you notice we got reimbursed for that $4 million, part of that, part of the deficit, because we were within our range. And so it's a moving target within ranges, and so you just don't want to go way out of whack. So even when you read this report, it's hard to know, are we suggesting that we're in a $7 million deficit at the end of the year? That's not what that's suggesting. It's just the interplay within the data as of this reporting period.
right, that's the other thing, from the revenue perspective, we hadn't booked our, post payment for, the month. So we'd only received our prepayment for July, so that will bring those numbers closer together as
Right.
well.
And CCBHC, believe me, it's not only a moving target. We got the state checking in with us about this year's constantly, where we're gonna end up with the amount of these extra payments and the amount of services we're providing. And so that interplay is not reflected in there yet. But yeah, so that's how I kind of explain some of that, because when I'm reading and I'm going, so where are we? And that's a legitimate question. But I can tell you, we're not at risk of being outside of that 5% kind of window, under 5% or over 5% that I look at. You get beyond 5%, then it has to be more of a radical change in utilization or radical decrease in revenue is really how you get there.
So it's fair to say, we'll never know exactly.
Not exactly,
Right?
right?
Okay.
You'll get close enough or good enough. But not exactly.
Better now.
Yes, I know. Believe me, try to have, I mean, Amy doesn't get any sleep because, you know, she's asked to keep saying, so where are we? She's like, well, it's Tuesday at 3 o'clock,
Right.
so we're here. Wednesday, we could be here. Oh, wait, they didn't give us the report until Friday. Now I won't know until next Thursday, right? I mean, that's the world we're living in.
I will say, for next month, we may have a budget adjustment because to increase revenues, just so we have some spending room to
Right.
move money to the right categories without, and also so we don't end in the general ledger in a deficit if we are, we'll have more detail on that if that comes to pass, that we have to increase revenues.
So as we look at the, you know, what you just presented to us, are there areas that are concerning to you?
No, but the things that I think make it hard, you know, for me, the increase and decrease in net position is a little confusing. You know, it's not a good target, and even the 2 million, I feel like we had, you know, revenue payments pending that came right after that brought those numbers close, so it's just a matter of when I look at it, I'm looking at, okay, oh, Medicaid hasn't been posted yet, and I go and check, yes, that's true, we didn't get our LRE grants, that's, you know, those are things that are true, so, not concerning, just business as usual, but
It's finding a way.
it's a lot of big
Yeah,
numbers
It's
and.
finding a way to write the report so that we're at the meeting, it's the best estimate based on all variables.
And to manage the perception.
Yeah, and so it's like,
Yeah,
okay, and To me, that is the concern, is how you report it
Mhm.
is really the more concerning on we know that we're going to have, we're looking at utilization trends, and autism is continuing to go up. Specialized residential is going up, right? Inpatient hospitalization up a little bit. But are they within the margins of error that is tolerated in the way that we're budgeting? And the answer right now is most likely kind of yes. And I say it that way because it just depends the day we're looking at it, but I will tell you, I had a question of, Michael, are you authorizing more residential services than maybe others within our organization? Are we authorizing more than in years past? Well, if you look at, I had to do this several years, it goes up and down, up and down. And as long as we're ensuring that people are in the right level of care, we're not over authorizing. Just so you know, just because somebody wants residential doesn't mean we give it to them. There's a whole process of getting that approved, but I'll tell you, one thing that's increased is the cost of delivering those services without a corresponding increase in revenue from the state that legitimizes the increased cost. They don't know the average salary is $20 an hour now, not 12. So, but I like that question, like, because she'd tell you, it's these 4 things, that are concerning. I'm concerned about everything all the time, but that's my job to be nervous about it. Fix it.
Okay, any other questions on that part of, the budget information? And you also gave us the year-to-date expense detail.
Madam Chair, I'll move we approve the financial statement as presented and forward it to the board for recommendation for approval.
And I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved and supported. Is there any further discussion? All-
Thank you.
Yeah. All in favor, please say aye,
Aye.
and opposed, same sign. That motion carries.
I lost me.
Okay. Public comment. Okay. Yeah, and thank you for these reports as well. I always think it's really nice to keep our eye on comparing where the programs are and also the one on contracted services.
Yeah.
Versus direct, yes. So then we'll move to our next item on the agenda, which is public comment. Is there anyone who would like to make a comment today?
Any public comment now?
Is there anyone online who'd like to make a public comment? Oh, Rosalie does. Sorry. Rosalie, can you hear us?
Okay, did I unmute? Can you hear me?
We can't hear you if you're talking.
Ugh.
Not sure why her sound's not coming through.
I have no idea.
And she has her.
Yeah, her hand is raised and I allowed her to talk. Try it again.
Hey,
To come through the TV anyways, because it's.
It should be coming through the owl.
Oh, through the owl.
Yeah.
Is there anything red on the owl?
unmute. Wait. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we hear you, Rosalie.
Now, okay. Can we talk about the Earned Sick Time Act for self-directed employers and where the funding's gonna come for that? Residential's got some rate increase, but it wasn't specifically for earned sick time, but do we have any idea where the funds is gonna come from that, or do we have to lower wages for Southie employees? And also, I really like the idea of the provider scorecards, and could there be a link in the tables to what was? Because I feel if providers are gonna be paid with public funds, that information should be public information. And if there is corrective action plans, is that public information? And there used to be a link to the Lara AFC lookup. Is that something that has been discontinued, or can that be put back in the table? And will the Mimbus quarterly report begin again? And the provider scorecard, some of them have 6 out of 6, 9 out of 10, 8 out of 8, 10 out of 12. But I'm very curious what is the actual score, and that it would be very helpful for quality control, quality improvement to have this information available.
Okay. Thank you so much for your comments, Rosalie. Is there anyone else who has a comment?
Nobody else online.
Okay. All right. And is there a motion to adjourn? All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
The meeting is adjourned. Thank you.